Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's time for part 2 of this series that I promised, looking at bonus tracks, compilation tracks, lost tracks of Roz Williams' various bands, projects. And so today we're going to tackle Shadow Project, Daucus Karota, Roz Williams, just Roz Williams stuff, and anything that kind of falls into the mix that kind of lines are blurred on. So we're going to start with Shadow Project, probably the most prominent project after Christian Death for Roz. If you're looking for part 1 of this series, the Christian Death years, I'll put a link in the description below. So moving on with Shadow Project, the first obscure item probably from Shadow Project predates all their official releases. It was released on Chuck Collazon's label Happiest Place on Earth, and it's a VHS videotape called Is Truth a Crime? And it's not really I wouldn't call it as like your standard fare for Shadow Project. It's kind of experimental along the lines of premature ejaculation, but this is a visual performance art piece as opposed to just audio sampling. This is like video sampling in its infancy. So it's really rare, it's really obscure, very hard to find. The last one I saw was on, I believe, Discogs, and somebody was selling it for, I think, $500. I have heard of them showing up for as little as $100 on eBay from sellers who don't really know what they have. They're just throwing something up on eBay that they found in a local store, like a vintage store or something, and they don't really know what they have. So you know, it winds up on eBay for this ridiculous amount, and it's gone like that. You know, their bidding wars ensue. I feel like Is Truth a Crime showed up on a later release, like an official release, but I haven't been able to pin that down. I thought maybe it was on this DVD that we're going to talk about later, but I'm reading the liner notes for that, and it doesn't appear that it's on that, but I feel like it was on something, like a bonus disc from Cleopatra or something. If anyone knows, please put that information in the comments below, because that would definitely help somebody track this down. Like I said, it's interesting. It's if you're really into the visual experimentation field, then definitely something you want to pick up. If you're looking for more of a traditional Shadow Project sound, this is probably not something that's gonna immediately appeal to you, even though it's rare, and it's definitely unique and obscure. It's definitely not something your average Shadow Project fan is going to have. So moving on to the next item, I found out about this item in '92, I believe it was. I believe there was an ad in Propaganda magazine about you could mail order this promotional cassette of Dead Baby's Killer for Shadow Project, and it was limited quantities, and I unfortunately got that magazine later in the month and completely missed the boat. When I tried to get the cassette, they were gone, but I did get it in later years, and this is it. I'm sorry about the glare. And so this was put out by XXX Records. This came out, I want to say, in conjunction with or just before their Shadow Project's second album, Dreams for the Dying. They are, I would say, you know, significantly rare. They don't show up that often. You know, maybe 3 or 4 times a year I'll see them on eBay. You can't get them on Discogs. There are a couple available, and it runs around $25. A cheaper alternative to get these two songs, if you're curious, about them, and I do recommend them. They're excellent cover, Alice Cooper covers. There was a compilation that came out in '93 called Welcome to Our Nightmare, and it was primarily artists on the XXX label that have covered Alice Cooper songs over the years. For instance, Lydia Lunch, Roland S. Howard's Black Juju is a very popular one. So a lot of these tracks have been released on these other artists' albums. This one from Shadow Project was unique to either this cassette or to this compilation. So that generally runs around $10–15. It's really affordable. It's a 2 CD set. I do recommend it. I think it's really great hearing these cover songs. My favorite song, in addition to Shadow Project's cover, is a project that's X45 Grave members called I gotta look at it. It's Wallace and Ladmo, and they do a cover of Levity Ball, which I think is amazing. The Alice Cooper tribute album, Welcome to Our Nightmare, pick it up for $10–15. Definitely worth it. It's interesting. Of compilations in my collection, it probably is, you know, it ranks pretty high, so I recommend it. Okay, so moving on, there were some demos that were from arguably '87, '88 that were traded among fans that only the tape traders really had access to, and they eventually showed up in an official capacity on a very short-lived release called The Original, or some people just called it Shadow Project, or The Original Shadow Project. I don't really know what it was supposed to be titled. If you look it up in Discogs, it's just titled The Original. And these are 6 tracks that are demos from, I want to say they're '87, '88. I think '87, but, you know, I've seen them listed as '88 as well. It might be both. I don't know. But it's When the Heart Breaks, which never got an official release. I believe that song was only available live on Intuned Out. I don't think it showed up on the self-titled album. I don't think it showed up on Dreams for the Dying. So it was sort of a lost Shadow Project track. So this is the only way to get the studio version of that. I believe the other tracks are Holy Hell, Penny in a Bucket. Okay, I'm just going to look. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to try to cheat. I don't have my magnifying glass. Alright, Working on Beyond, Lying Deep, Holy Hell, Death Plays His Role, Penny in a Bucket, and When the Heart Breaks. So, they're really great. These are great tracks. They are of the same quality. If you have the bootleg tape, they're of that same quality. They're not cleaned up at all. It was on a German label for, it was only out about a year and a half, and the label was called Alice in Wonderland Records, I believe, and they heavily marketed this. It was available in the US, and but again, it was from a German label, and it was out about a year and a half before it went out of print. I think there were only 1,000 copies of this made, and I'm just going to check my notes real quick. And yep, 1,000 copies officially made. You can still pick this up for about $10. It's not that hard to get. If you are going to be picking up the reissue of Shadow Project's self-titled album, the one that came out on Cleopatra in 2015, I think, then these 6 tracks are on that. So you wouldn't need to pick this up separate. It would be on that self-titled reissue release from Cleopatra, and it has the blue. If you're trying to figure out which one it is, it's the self-titled Shadow Project album that has the blue and black cover with the shadow holding a knife to somebody. So that is, these tracks are on that. The only other thing that I have really for Shadow Project that I want to bring up is that DVD that I showed you earlier. And this is actually really nice. I believe Ava O was behind this, and it was distributed by Music Video Distribution, which I believe have done some other death rock punk DVDs that I have, and the quality is good. I know as far as like DVD menu production and everything, it's pretty, you know, standard. It's not high quality, not fancy, but it's a really nice DVD, and you can still pick this up for, you know, 10-15 bucks. And this has live performances all through the 90s of Shadow Project, and they've kind of handpicked the performances to use from some of the better ones. So there is, you know, as a person that has a handful of bootleg Shadow Project DVDs, there is some footage on here that I don't have, so it's really nice to see it. And it also led me down a path to try to find some footage that I can add to my collection through trading. So I definitely recommend that DVD to anyone that's a Shadow Project fan. And I only want to add one other thing. Well, two things. There is a compilation out there called Californian Death Rock, and there is a Shadow Project song on it. A lot of people thought maybe this was going to be from the really rare KXLU radio session. The two tracks on there one from Christian Death, one from Shadow Project, they are just the album versions. They are not exclusive, but there is a 45 Grave performance on there. There's a live version of Procession that is pretty good. It's pretty decent. Otherwise, I don't really recommend that compilation to anyone. The KXLU performance that was released by me through Halo Productions back in 98, 99, it was very limited. I think we did 34 copies. They sold out very quickly, and I have never seen any show up ever since. People do submit it. People that have it have submitted it to Discogs, and then people argue about whether it's an official release, and it gets pulled down. I've seen it go on and off Discogs a couple of times. It's not an official release. Let me just make that clear. It was done right after Roz passed away. It was my effort to put money towards the memorial niche that's in Hollywood Forever Cemetery. At the time, Nico became involved with that project to make sure that that niche was going to be paid for and ready. And Nico sort of took the mantle of that, and the funds from that release that I did, I don't even honestly remember. I know the money got sent somewhere, but I don't remember what happened to it or how it was used. But again, it was an unofficial release. It was done through my personal website at the time, and it was done with the blessing of Rosnet. But again, it's an unofficial release. It should be considered a bootleg for all intents and purposes. So the other thing I wanted to mention is another band called The Shadow Project, and they came out shortly after Roz died, I think around 2004. And I only bring them up because a lot of young fans that are learning about Roz's career stumble on Shadow Project, and they think that this band is somehow connected. They are not at all connected. So I know the band reformed a few years ago after breaking up, I think in 2007 or 2009. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. They are a UK band called The Shadow Project. They have nothing to do with Roz Williams or that band in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so as we move into 93 and 94, we see Roz taking on a mantle of a rock star, sort of reliving his youth through the eyes of Bowie and Mark Bolan and Roxy Music. So really re-envisioning glam rock for a modern era. And Roz has all the skills, all the talents to pull that off, and he does an incredible job. So it gets kicked off with the Daucus Karota EP release, Shrine. Those 5 tracks, definitely a more rock vein. You have the Stooges cover on there, and there are a handful of other tracks that we're going to talk about here in a minute that suggest that Roz wanted to release a full-length rock album, either as Daucus Karota or as Roz Williams. So I'm going to start with Live in Berlin. And the challenge with this era is there aren't a lot of unheard tracks. Most of them have been released at this point in one form or another, but there isn't much from a studio. Everything that's out there from Daucus Karota, Roz Williams solo, spoken word, the Dream Home Heartache with Jatan Damone, most of this that's available that hasn't been released on the studio albums is only available as a live track. None of this was really taken into a studio, with the exception of a tape that exists of Roz Williams home demos, and I think those are from '94, and those are just Roz and then Roz with Todd Dixon, and that's really the only studio environment that there is for most of these tracks that we're going to talk about now. Unfortunately, Roz never took them into a studio to be polished, finished, recorded, mastered for a proper release. So what we have are live versions. But we do have some really immaculate live recordings that have, for the most part, a really clean, clear, almost studio quality sound. So like I said, we're going to talk about Live in Berlin. That was this album right here. It is now out of print. And this is from a largely traded bootleg cassette. This was put out by Hollows Hill, which was a subsidiary of XXX Records. You can pick that up for about $10 to $15. And the interesting thing about this album, besides the omission of all Christian Death tracks from the recording, or from the released recording, is the inclusion of Sunken Rags, which is a T-Rex cover. You have Two Steps, you have Nothing, and World Apart. Those were all new tracks for Roz at this time. It was recorded in Berlin, I believe, and I think this is one of the '93 shows. And these are Daucus Karota songs. This performance is a Daucus Karota performance. So those were some tracks that most fans believe were going to be recorded for a studio album at some point that never came to fruition. If you jump up to the Sleeping Dogs release that was released by Dark Vinyl in 2013, you get the rest of those songs that we think as fans that were intended for a studio full-length album. And those songs include Moon Age Daydream, Bowie cover, Hold Me Down, Bruised, Nostalgia, and The Doll. And that, along with those first 4 tracks, would have fleshed out a very amazing rock album had Roz been able to take that into a studio environment. So I'm just going to jump over to Sleeping Dogs. So you know, that one is a little pricey. It's not that old. The CD can run you about $30. The album, which includes 2 bonus tracks, depending on the version that you get, the black starts around $100, and then the versions with like a marbled vinyl, those can run in the 200s already. So definitely snag it if you can find it at a good rate, at a good price, because it just seems to be going up and up at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Dark Vinyl does a reissue at some point on this. They did a reissue on the original Dream Home Heartache, so you know, it wouldn't surprise me to see a reissue at some point on this. Who knows? Speaking of Dream Home Heartache, there is a track on the reissue of that most fans who have the original release from Dark Vinyl or from XXX don't have, and it is Manic Depression 2. It's only on the reissue that came out in 2000, let me look at my notes, 2002 on Paragoric. That's a German label that's associated with Dark Vinyl. And like I said, it's Manic Depression 2. CD will run you about 30 bucks. LP will run you about 100 or more. It's a nice track. Definitely like having it in my collection. But if you're looking for a Roz track, no, this is Jeton vocal. And I'm not sure what Roz's involvement with the song is. Also from this time, we're in the like 94 era now. Getting ready to go into 95. Roz begins experimenting with lounge music, a la, let's just say Roxy Music. I think there was a motivation here. The Dream Home Heartache era gave us Time, and that is available on numerous releases. I think the cheapest way to get it is on Goth Oddity 2000. It is a beautiful Bowie cover. The version that has been released time and time again is from Miami in 96. And yeah, it's a clean, really clean audience. Contamination is very minimal on that track. It's really beautiful. But again, it has been released on several compilations, and it's also on the Iron Mask reissue that came out. When did that come out? That came out in 2015. Your cheapest alternative is to find one of those early Cleopatra compilations that is a Bowie tribute, and Time is on there, and it is the same recording. It has, there's nothing special about any of the other versions of this song that you can't get with the Goth Oddity, and that will run you about 10 bucks. You can probably find it even cheaper in a used bin at your local independent record store. So I'm going to jump backwards now into 99. There was a release by Cult Epics. It was only available with the Art of Roz Williams book. The first 1,000 orders of the book came with this CD. This is pretty highly sought after by Roz collectors. You can pick it up by itself on Discogs and on eBay around 30 bucks, sometimes 40. Some people want 100 for it. It's worth, you know, I would say 25 to 30 bucks. I wouldn't spend much more on it. The 4 tracks that are on it are all live, despite the wording that's on the disc. They were recorded during the 95 tour with Jeton Damone throughout Europe, and they are all beautiful. Again, minimal audience intervention here, so they're really clean, they're really well recorded, definitely soundboard recordings, and definitely worth picking up. Shadow Stand is the jump out track here. It is a track that is only available on this release. And then you also have an updated version of Angels, the Angels Cruciform, which was on The Path of Sorrows. This is a more cabaret version of that. A Trophy of Skin and Lead Us Not. Those are both reworkings from Roz's spoken word album, The Horse's Mouth. So definitely worth having. Again, it's limited to 1,000, so you know, 25, 30 bucks. I think you're in a good market there. So let's jump to the oddball of the group, and that was in a release that was out a couple years, but it's also limited. It is currently out of print. I think everything I've shown you and mentioned is out of print. Except, obviously, the new On the Altar and the Heart, that is still in print, available through Dark Vinyl. I will put a link in the description. Everything else, I believe, is out of print. Live in Berlin is out of print, which is this one. This disc is out of print, but easy to find, and I believe was included again with the hardcover issue of The Art of Roz Williams. Sleeping Dogs is out of print already. Dream Home Heartache reissue is out of print. All the early compilations from Cleopatra Records are out of print, but like I said, you can pick up Goth Oddity 2000 really cheap and pick up that song Time. So that leads us to this, which is Accept the Gift of Sin. Let me pull it out of the envelope. And this was released by Hollow Sail Recordings, Sound Recordings, and was initiated, the effort was initiated by David E. Williams, who accompanies Roz Williams on this performance. This is one of the final performances of Roz Williams. This took place in 1996 at the Philadelphia Dark Harvest Festival. And I'm just counting here real quick. Roz had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, only 10 performances after this one. But you will not find another show like this. This is perhaps the most unique live show Roz ever did. You could arguably say, you know, the show that Roz did of all covers in, I believe that was in 87 or 88. Is up there, but this one definitely takes the cake. You have Roz covering show tunes. You have Roz reworking early Christian Death songs, Cavity for instance. And you have, I think, the only live performance of a spoken word track from Every King a Bastard Son. Roz performs Mindfuck, Soundtrack to a Murder, on this at this show. And I can tell you, listening to it, it's visceral. Like, Roz shuns the crowd into silence. They are so struck by his emotive power and his angst in reciting this song that the crowd just falls silent. It's powerful. So I definitely recommend picking this up, and though it's out of print and it's pretty rare, you can find them pretty regularly on eBay and Discogs for sure, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's, you know, going to run you maybe $10 to $20. Unfortunately, it's not the complete show, which I think for trademark reasons probably they were unable to do, but the tracks that are included here, which there are 2, 4, 6, 7, are amazing. And again, this is with David E. Williams, an iconic character of his own accord, masterful musician. So you do have some of his tracks on here with Roz and accompanying David E. Williams vocals. So incredible recording. I definitely highly recommend that. So the last track I want to talk about, you know, I almost did not include on my list. The idea of these videos, the compilation video, you know, where what tracks are out there that maybe you haven't heard or want to add to your collection that are on these oddball items. This definitely falls into that category, but the idea for me was that I was going to find you an easy way, or the quickest way, most affordable way to obtain these tracks. And this track eludes all those avenues. There is only one way to get this if you want a hard copy of it, and your only other option is to go digital. So it does not exist in my collection. I have a digital copy of it, but there is no hard copy of it, and I'm not sure if I ever will have a hard copy of this song, despite my desire to have a hard copy. It's a track called The Blue Heart, and Roz recorded this in 1988, and it is his first spoken word piece. It's unique from what would come out in Every King a Bastard Son and Horse's Mouth, and that Roz's vocals on this have an effect that make it very haunting and chilling. And the music is very much a premature ejaculation hybrid with the kind of sound effects that kind of you got on and Every King of Bastard's Son. It's a beautiful song, and it's unfortunate that no one has had the foresight to release it officially other than Happiest Place on Earth. The Chuck Collison label, who released much of the early premature ejaculation and Helter, it is only available on a compilation that they did called Happiest Music of Earth Volume 1. On that, there is premature ejaculation, there is Amaween, there's a lot of great stuff. Oh, COINTELPRO. There's a lot of great stuff on that compilation. So if you can ever find it, get it. If you can afford it. But this track, this spoken word track by Roz Williams, is also on there. And that is the only way that you can get it. And it'll easily set you back $200 or more to obtain it, to add it to your collection. You know, you have probably seen what the original tapes, Happiest Place on Earth tapes, will try to fetch on eBay. People that have them equate them with a treasure, a gold mine, and will sell them for $1,334 because that's just what they can do. And you know, there are whales out there who have the money to spend on this stuff, but there's not a lot of them, and you know, that's kind of drying up. And so unless something is truly unique, most of the whales have these items now. So that just leaves us people that don't have a lot of extra money to spend, especially not $1,000 on a cassette. So with all the labels out there that are bootlegging recordings and releasing stuff officially without any permission to do so, you'd think that this track would have shown up somewhere by now, but no, it has not. It is on Happiest Music of Earth Volume 1, and that is it. And it's going to cost you $250 to $300 or more, maybe $1,000. But I do recommend that you at least go listen to it and decide for yourself. Is that something that I would spend $1,000 on? It's not something I would spend $1,000 on, but I do love this song. I can't afford $1,000 to spend just to get one song, like most of us. So I know the Roz Williams Scholar Society has a recording of this on their YouTube channel, so I will provide a link to them below and to that video, and definitely go check it out and give them some love. Speaking of that, I wanted to thank everyone that has left comments below, especially the Roz Williams Scholar Society. They have been very supportive, and they have left amazing feedback in the comment sections of all my videos, or most of my videos, and with really helpful information for fans and collectors. So a shout out to them, a big thank you, and definitely go check out their channel. They have some amazing stuff. You know, in addition to the Blue Heart recording, they have what was the first time I ever heard it, was an actual Only Theater of Pain demo that isn't on Death Wish. It was an actual Only Theater of Pain demo that I've never heard before. So props to them for having those recordings. I don't have them. So definitely check out their channel. They have some unique stuff. So with that said, I've pretty much covered everything. You know, this era of Roz, like I said, is a lot of live recordings. There's not a lot of studio stuff there, unfortunately. You know, Roz was constantly touring, did not have a lot of money, and unfortunately didn't take a lot into the studio. So, you know, that's our loss. So you kind of have to kind of piece his, what would have been his studio career from like 93 on, with the recordings we do have that did come out, and these mishmash live recordings. And when you do that, you can definitely see that Roz was heavily influenced. Well, he'd always been influenced, but he was definitely revitalizing a glam rock era that was long gone. So props to him for that, and to bringing fans, you know, young fans, some awareness of what came before him. So That's all I've got. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, and I will see you for video 3, premature ejaculation, halter, and whatever else we can dig up from a noise perspective. Take care.